And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the conclusion, the end of the road for Volume 5, Chapter 14, the big season finale entitled Haven's Fate. Wow. This was such an enjoyable season finale for Volume 5 of RWBY. I had to watch this episode 2 to 3 times, and I enjoyed it every single time. So right off the bat, I just want to say congratulations to everyone involved with this. A big round of applause to the RWBY, the voice actors, the animators, Carrie and Miles, who write out the story for RWBY. You guys did a fantastic job. I've enjoyed the entire journey that Volume 5 had for us from the beginning with the character shorts with Weiss, Blake, and Yang, and then diving straight into Volume 5. And this was just so satisfying for me. Thank you guys for everything that you've done. I know this was hard work for you guys, but everything, just so you guys know, we appreciate all the hard work you guys put into this series, and it makes it that much more enjoyable knowing that you guys put this much hard work into it. So again, round of applause to everyone involved with this project. But without further ado, guys, let's get to talking and discussing what went down in the season finale of RWBY. And just so you guys are aware, I will be talking about spoilers. So if you guys know the drill, go watch the episode, the season finale, whenever you can. Come back here when you're ready, and let's just talk about what went down. Oh boy, in Chapter 14, Haven's Fate. So now with that out of the way, guys, let's talk about the Volume 5 finale. And the first thing that I definitely want to bring up right off the bat that I feel like a lot of people will be talking about with Chapter 14 was the lack of fight sequences that we kind of had in Chapter 14. And I am totally fine that we really didn't have a big action set piece for the season finale of RWBY Volume 5, because with the last chapter, Chapter 13, it gave us a fantastic fight. You could honestly say that that was the magnum opus of the Volume 5 fights that we were going to get in this volume. I absolutely loved that fight between Raven and Cinder. But what I really loved about this finale is that it really got personal, and we had a lot of good character moments, good character interactions, and good character dialogue going back and forth. The Yang and Raven conversation was so good. Like, the dialogue going back and forth between these two characters, I was just so enthralled with. The back sass, the back and forth between these two, you know, calling each other out, that was so good. But what's going to leave a lot of people satisfied with this volume is finally seeing the full reunion of Team RWBY. We get it at the end of the chapter, but I'm still happy now that we have Blake, Weiss, Yang, and RWBY all together again, and I'm just excited for Volume 6 because it's going to be since Volume 3, all 4 of our girls have been together. So Volume 6, I am really looking forward to. But that doesn't just mean that this volume finale did not get dark. There were a few dark moments in this chapter, and I'll talk a little bit more about them as we go through this video. But Leo's death got very, very dark, and everything that went down with Emerald doing that massive illusion of Salem, I got a lot of thoughts on that. I am really glad that that really surprised me. I suspected a giant Salem, but I did not expect them to execute it in that way. So I was totally surprised when that popped up in this chapter the way it did. So let's rewind a little bit, guys, and go back to the beginning of this finale, go through it section by section, talk about what I loved, what I enjoyed, and what this means for the story of RWBY now that Volume 5 is done and Volume 6 will be coming back in the fall, because the ending of this finale does bring up a lot of questions and gives us some hints and clues as to what Volume 6 might have to offer. So I got a lot of questions and a lot of theories and speculations as now we look towards Volume 6 in the near future. But the first section that we will talk about for this finale is Blake and Sun confronting Adam. We see all of the White Fang members being surrounded and arrested by the Faunus and the Mistral police, and Ilya had a great moment to shine in this section when she took down one of the grunts and put him in an armbar position. I really did like that moment that they gave that to Ilya for this chapter, but it's once Adam realizes that all of his subordinates are kind of down for the count, he knows that this is a losing battle for the White Fang at Haven Academy. But this section allows us just to dive just a little bit more into Adam's character, because it's once he starts talking to Blake, I just was realizing once again how obsessive he was of Blake. He kind of has this possession over her to where he just wants to be the most important thing in Blake's life. He kind of views her as this item or pets in his possession that he just wants to be on her mind 24/7, whether he's with her or not with her. He wants to be that most important person in Blake's life in the most twisted way possible. But it's that line delivered by Blake when she tells Adam, "I'm not here for you. I got more important things to deal with than you right now." And when Adam heard that, he was not happy at all, but he knows he cannot take on Blake and Sun at the same time. And I'm really glad that Sun whipped out the gunchucks in this section, but Adam ended up taking the coward's way out and retreating without a majority or all of his White Fang subordinates. And this goes to show, you can be a leader of a group, but that does not mean that people are going to follow you blindly. There has to be trust there. And now that Adam left all of the White Fang members there to be arrested, nobody within the White Fang is going to view him as a competent leader. He's going to lose all that trust, all that faith. He's going to be on his own right now. And I am really glad that Adam ended up getting away, because not only does Blake have to confront Adam later on her own terms, Yang has to confront Adam. I want her to get a few punches in on Adam to repay him for what he did to her arm. So I'm kind of glad Adam got away, but this overall section really took Adam down a peg, which I really did enjoy. But we will be seeing Adam in the near future of RWBY, and I am going to be very excited once ever Blake or Yang confronts him again. Plus, I just loved getting to see Adam acting like the big, whiny, baby man-child that he actually is. That was very satisfying to see, and it makes me laugh every time he has one of his outbursts. They just crack me up. But I'm really proud of both Blake and Sun not chasing after Adam, because even though we know that he is going to come back later on, if they did end up following him, they would be much easier to pick off once they end up leaving the group. So very smart move by Blake and Sun. And at this moment, Sun ends up separating from Blake. Blake ends up going back into the building to assist with RWBY and Weiss with Hazel, and Sun goes to help the remaining of the White Fang forces with the Faunus and the Mistral Police. But once we make our way back in with Blake jumping in onto Hazel, I love that moment, and it's having 3/4 of the RWBY team back together again. That is such a good moment and a good screenshot of seeing RWBY and Weiss and Blake standing there. And when she said checkmate, I was like, that is such a good callback. But I gotta say, Hazel is an absolute monster. He is relentless. He is the bane of the RWBY universe, because he can't feel pain, he doesn't really get fatigued, and his aura was replenishing very, very quickly. So like Ren, Nora, Crow, and Ozpin were just so exhausted trying to take down this brute. But I love the funny moment too when like Leo ends up running away and Mercury's like, "You gotta be kidding me." And that face Mercury makes when Hazel is in the middle of Emerald and Mercury and he's just screaming at the top of his lungs, go and look at Mercury's face. It is absolutely hilarious. So Team RWBY minus Yang is left to deal with Team Hem, but this is where we kind of transition into the first dark moment of this episode, of this finale, where we get to see the demise of Leo Lionheart. And many people have been theorizing that Leo was going to die by the ending of this volume, and they were in fact correct. And he pussied out like a bitch. He was a coward until the very end. The first time we met him, he was a coward, and when he stared death in the face, he was still a coward. And I love how Salem took him out with the Seer Grim, because that was kind of foreshadowed not only in the intro, but also back in chapter 2 when the Seer Grim first kind of like choked him with one of its tendrils. But the other added effect that I really enjoyed that the crew did for this section was that when the Seer Grim dragged him off screen, we didn't get to see how the Seer Grim killed him. We only got to hear the sound effects and him pleading for his life. That right there is a nice added touch, because it just leaves it to our imagination. Our imagination can run wild and make the scene a lot darker than it actually was. Was Leo stabbed in the arms, the legs, the stomach, the chest, neck, head? This allows my imagination to think of all the possibilities on how the Seer Grim ended up killing Leo. And that's just fun for me in a very twisted and dark way. So thank you, the crew behind RWBY, who did that section. That was a nice added effect that kind of just allows us to use our imagination and picture and make the scene a lot darker than it actually was. But that was not the only dark scene within this finale, and I'll get to talking about that twisted, ghostly, amazing sequence in a little bit. But now I gotta talk about my favorite sequence, my favorite section out of this entire chapter, and just because of the dialogue alone is why this is my favorite section, and that was the conversation that took place between Yang and Raven. The voice acting alone within this section was executed so well. Barbara and Anna, the voice actresses for Yang and Raven respectively, did a fantastic job, and they deserve a round of applause for the emotional weight that they brought to every single word uttered throughout this entire conversation, because these characters have a very deep and frustrated, complicated relationship. The abandonment, the anger, the frustration, it's all there, and this conversation really brought everything bubbling to the surface. But what I really did love is that it really dived into the characters of Raven and Yang, because when you look back at the entire series with Raven's character, we know that she has always run away, she's abandoned Yang, she usually flees and never really stays for a fight. But now knowing with the big reveal that she is in fact the Spring Maiden, she has maiden powers, she is a very powerful character within the world of RWBY. And you would think having all that power, she'd be willing to stay and fight, but no, she is scared. She is a coward. She is willing to let other people fight her battles while she runs away and hides. And that right there is a big contrast when you compare her to Yang, her daughter, who isn't all powerful, doesn't have maiden powers, and is scared out of her mind of the unknown that she's going up against with Salem, but she is still willing to stay and fight. And that is the big difference between Yang and Raven. And throughout this entire conversation, Yang was the dominant one. She was the one talking back to Raven, and Raven was kind of the one on edge and didn't really know what to say back. And even when Yang replied back to her saying, "You're going to deliver and give me that relic right there," and Raven's like, "Well, why would I do that? It's because you are scared of Salem." And that right there basically broke Raven. Yang realizes the threat that Salem is. She doesn't know who it is, but she is willing to risk everything to get that relic in her possession, because even if Salem comes to get it, she will still stand her ground and fight. And Raven doesn't want that baggage. She doesn't want Salem coming after her, because not only would she be a maiden, she would be a maiden with a relic. That right there, that little piece of dialogue, that little conversation back and forth, it was just so good. I loved this conversation. It really brought everything that's been brought up between Yang and Raven to a head, to a point to where Raven just gave up. We actually saw her cry and apologize to Yang as Yang was walking to go get the relic, and then Raven just turns into a bird and flies away, and all that's left is her feather. It was beautiful the way it was executed, and the way that Yang just walked into this other dimension to retrieve the lantern relic, whatever it may be, but then drops down to cry. And you can interpret Yang dropping down to cry in many different ways, but I think in that moment, Yang is slowly realizing that her mother is not actually her true mother, because usually in that type of situation, a mother would risk everything to protect their loved ones, especially their children. But in this situation, Raven would rather run and hide and allow Yang to face this unknown threat, put herself in danger, and I think that really upsets Yang the most, that her mother is a coward, is scared, and isn't willing to stand up and fight with her. And I do feel bad for Yang. And this entire section, bravo, yet again, to RWBY. This was a well-executed scene. We make our way from the vault, going back up to the surface, where we have Emerald, Mercury, and Hazel surrounded by everybody, and Emerald is still holding out hope that Cinder will be the one rising up from the vault, holding the relic in her hands. That way they can go back to Salem and escape this situation. However, Emerald is so wrong, because we see Yang rising up on the elevator with the relic in hand, and this leads to a beautifully dark, twisted moment with Emerald completely losing it, using her illusion semblance to summon a distorted, ghostly version, a gigantic version of Salem. I have been saying that we might see a gigantic Salem in the finale, because that's what the intro was kind of foreshadowing. However, this was executed in a way that I did not actually expect, because I did not even think of the whole concept that Emerald was going to create an illusion, this distorted dark version of Salem. And when I saw that version with the twisty arms, just how evil she looked, that is the way Emerald views Salem. That is very cool to see, just how the atmosphere overall changed. And this allowed RWBY, Weiss, and everybody else who has not seen Salem yet to see the true face of evil. This scene right here was so dark. If you guys can't tell, I love the dark moments in RWBY when it gets there, when it gets really dark, and the way that the face just zoomed in on the screen. This was like from a horror movie. I absolutely love this. But Blake right now, I feel so bad for because she has no idea what's even going on right now. She has no idea about Salem, maidens, magic. She right now needs a crash course to catch up with everybody about what has been going on behind the scenes, and that everything going on with the Faunus right now is really small and minuscule compared to the grand scope of Salem trying to take over the world. Then from this point onward, towards the ending of this finale, we have a lot of conclusions. Emerald, Mercury, Hazel, and Adam all have escaped, so we will definitely see more of them in Volume 6. Gira right now is going to be taking the divided White Fang and making a positive version of itself, you know, to where Faunus and humans can both benefit from it. So that's going to be a nice change of pace from the very evil White Fang. But I think what everybody was satisfied with by the ending of this chapter was getting to see Team RWBY coming back together with RWBY, Weiss, Blake, and Yang finally being reunited, which we haven't seen since the ending of Volume 3. It has been a long time coming, but I'm so glad to see it, and especially with Yang finally accepting Blake back into the group, and that little group hug, it was just so nice to see. Definitely warms everyone's heart. I think that made everyone satisfied that we now have all 4 of the girls back together again. But that ending conversation with Crow and Oscar, we know with Ozpin being asleep right now, he's very fatigued, and so is Oscar, but Crow is holding the relic, the lantern, and the message that Oscar tells Crow that Ozpin told him to give is, take the lantern to Atlas. I know I heard Atlas mentioned and maybe the lantern. I could be misinterpreting what was exactly said, but I do know Atlas was mentioned before Oscar ended up fainting. So is that hinting at where we're going to be going with Volume 6? This definitely raises a lot of questions. I'm really glad that we had a lot of conclusions of the stories brought up in Volume 5, but there's still a lot of questions still up in the air for what Volume 6 is going to bring to the story of RWBY. And that right there brings us to the ending of the finale. We still have the end credits and then the end credits song, which was a part 2 to From Shadows entitled This Time. And then we dive into the mid-credit scene, or I guess after-credit scene, where we have Raven returning home to Patch Island, to RWBY, Yang, and Ty's home. Ty is tending to his sunflowers. He turns around and sees the feather falling, and judging by his expression, he is not too happy to know that Raven has returned home. So I am very interested to see what that dynamic is going to be, but I'm still just a little bit bummed that the end credit scene was in Salem retrieving Cinder at the bottom of that abyss. So that is basically telling me that there is still hope, and I'm about like 90% sure that Cinder will return in some form or way in the future of RWBY. And with that, guys, I think that's everything I really wanted to talk about and to discuss about Chapter 14 of Volume 5 of RWBY, the season finale. This was very satisfying and ended on a very happy note, and I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts about this overall volume as a whole, but also with Chapter 14, what went down in it, what was your favorite part, and what questions do you now have going into Volume 6? I have questions myself, but I think I'll save those for another video, just discussing and talking about what we should expect, or what most of us are expecting Volume 6 to bring to the table. New characters, old characters, a new setting, new maidens, the villains' moves, Blake learning about all this. There's a bunch of stuff that needs to be covered in Volume 6, but I am super excited and eager to see what the crew behind RWBY has in store for us when Volume 6 returns in the fall of 2018. So that's going to be the end of my review, guys. Thanks for following me, guys, as I've covered RWBY this volume. I've had a lot of fun covering it chapter by chapter. Love getting to talk with all of you guys. Theories, speculations, just talking about what we enjoy about RWBY, because this is such an enjoyable series that Rooster Teeth has bestowed upon us. So I do expect more RWBY content in the future during this down period in between Volume 5 and Volume 6. I'm going to try to do more RWBY content on my channel because it's just enjoyable for me, and I get to talk about it in the down season when we need to talk about it most to keep the hype train alive. So that's going to be the end of my review, guys. Comment down below, leave all of your suggestions and what you thought about this episode down in the comments below. I love you guys so much, but until the next RWBY related video or any other video that appears on my channel, I'll talk with you guys later. See you later, guys.